This is Matthew Cersley with agoristaxadvice.com, here to talk to you about how to save money on your taxes. And for once, this isn't about having a business. Now, I got an email after I did my video on overtime and the tax-free overtime stuff, calling me out. He did not like the fact that I had recommended you max out your 401k to save money on taxes. And honestly, he's right. You shouldn't just max out your 401k. Now, in that video, I was talking about solo 401ks, which are, it can be amazing for a self-employed person who qualifies for one. But a regular 401k has issues. So I want to talk today about my general preferred order for using tax-deferred and tax-advantaged accounts, particularly when you are a regular W-2 employee, or maybe you have a little side income, but not really a formal business setup. Please realize this is a general list, and the ideal strategy for you could be quite different. Now, first up, if you qualify, health savings account. This is the gold star in tax-advantaged accounts. It is the only thing where you get a deduction on your income for putting the money in, where it grows tax-free, and you can get the money out tax-free. Now, you can only take it out tax-free to pay for medical expenses, but you're going to have medical expenses. Your family's going to have medical expenses. And when you're old enough, you can use it just like an IRA. So it's always as good as an IRA, but it's often better. By the way, and I learned this from Jake Robinson, it used to be you couldn't have an HSA if you have a health share plan. And I know a lot of people in this community have health share plans. But now there are health share plans that include basic insurance specifically to qualify to get a health savings account. So you can check that out even if you don't have or want traditional insurance. Personally, I have an HSA. I can't put more money into it right now, but I still have from when I put money into it. And I'm not even using it to pay for medical expenses right now. I'm investing it to help it grow since I can afford the current medical expenses out of pocket right now. But if I ever had a really bad day, the money would be there. Next up, employer match on your 401k. And I call this matching out. So put money into the 401k, but only up to whatever the match is. Most places it'll be 3 or 4%. That's free money. That's a 100% immediate guaranteed return. Get the match. After the match, I don't really like 401k plans, especially most 401ks that have limited funds, limited options, and they tend to be very high fee. Now, this changes a little bit. If you're lucky enough, I have one friend who his 401k is a Fidelity 401k, and he can invest in anything Fidelity allows with no restrictions. Great. But for most people, for my last 401k that I could invest in maybe 40 mutual funds and that was it, match, then out. Now remember, most 401ks have Roth options, which is my personal preference for most people. It used to be only your contribution could be Roth and the employer match would be traditional. It's now actually allowed for the employer match to be Roth as well, but your employer has to set that up. Very few plans I've seen actually have phased this in yet because this only became possible in 2024. And by the way, you could argue to do the matching out on your 401k and then your HSA. That's fine too. That's not the way I do it, but there's a valid argument for that. Now, third in line, after you've done your HSA and matching out, is the Roth IRA. Now, this you fund with after-tax dollars, so you're not going to save money on your taxes immediately, but the growth and the withdrawals are totally tax-free when you follow the rules. And as I did in a previous video, or pointed out in a previous video, there are ways to get the money out before you're ready to retire. Now, this is where you buy a lot of stuff that maybe you can't in your 401k plan. I love buying Bitcoin ETFs here. You can do broad index funds. You can do long-term plans, things you want to grow for decades without ever thinking about taxes. Or you can use it as a trader. And I know a number of people who are basically day traders with their Roth IRA, and that works much better than being in a traditional account. Roth IRAs, and this is only for IRAs, not 401ks, also give additional flexibility because after it's been open for long enough, you can pull out your contributions at any time with no penalty. So it can be a good backup fund if you need it. Uh, for younger folks or people in a lower tax bracket, Roth is always going to be better than traditional. But even if you're a high income earner, if you can do Roth, uh, it often will be the best thing for you, even in the high tax bracket. But again, run the numbers yourself. Um, if you cannot do a Roth IRA, or if you're a very, very high net worth individual, do a traditional IRA instead. This one gives you an upfront tax deduction. Again, if you qualify, sometimes if you're a W-2 employee, you don't get the deduction if you have a work retirement program and you make too much money. The fact that it grows tax-free, it can still be better, even without the deduction, than putting it into a 401k with the fees. I've seen the modeling. If you're only going to be in it for 2 or 3 years, it's not going to matter. But if you're not talking 10, 15, 20 years, a traditional IRA can still be better than the 401k. Okay, now you've done all this stuff. You still got money you want to put away. Now go back to the 401k and put the money there. It still is better a lot of the time than putting it into a traditional account. Now, you've maxed out all these things, including your 401k. Well, the next thing is the last thing for a reason. It's 529 plans. Until 2 years ago, these were not on my list. I hated them for almost everybody. The only reason they made any sense was if you got a state tax deduction on them. They've gotten a little bit better due to some changes in the law in 2023 and 2024. So now they're not terrible. They're just not optimal. They can be great if you're certain you're going to be paying for college or private school. They can also now be used to be for trade school. And if you don't use them for that, they can eventually be rolled over into a Roth IRA. But they're very limited in use. And you get no deduction on the way in. You have no flexibility to purchase them other than rolling them into a Roth IRA eventually. And even then, there's limits to how much money you can do that with. So if you massively overfund it and then the kid doesn't go to college or trade school or anything, now you've got a problem. You can't get the money out without paying penalties, and you never got a tax deduction in the first place. So these are a very specialty tool. Use them when you've got a clear plan for the funds, but build your other buckets first. Also, it's just like being on a plane. You got to take care of yourself and your own retirement before you take care of the person on the plane next to you. So you need to be maxing out your own retirement accounts before you start thinking about a 529 plan. Again, for most people, niche cases apply. Now, there are a lot of other options other than these things, but all of them are even more niche. Things like infinite banking, which I don't endorse for everybody, but there are use cases for it. I may disagree with Jack and John on that one. Able plans can be very, very good if you or a loved one is disabled. There's also other investments like real estate and crypto you should be making. Also, many of the above plans can be self-directed, so you could use them to invest in things other than securities. You can convert traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs. Sometimes that makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. These are all options, and feel free to slot these in where they make sense for you. And you probably should have a traditional brokerage account, something that's not tax advantaged. This is actually what I kind of do for my rainy day fund. I've got cash, but then I kind of have half of my rainy day fund in the market. Yeah, it could go down. That's why I've got some in cash. But it's always, I think everybody, if you're doing these things, you should also have a traditional retirement account. Now, I want to go back to that person in that email. They suggested to avoid traditional IRAs entirely and traditional 401ks entirely and just use a traditional brokerage account instead. And the reason was with a traditional brokerage account, you only pay capital gains instead of ordinary income taxes, like in an IRA, and that there are times that capital rates gain could be zero, and it's usually only 15%. That's true. And if you are somebody who is, 56, 57, 58, you don't have a lot of time necessarily that this money is going to be in the retirement account. Maybe that does make sense. But I think for the average person, especially younger people 40 and younger, Even a traditional IRA is much better because that ability to invest in the IRA tax-free with tax-free growth helps that money grow faster. So I've seen a lot of different modeling on this. I just ran some modeling myself. I did some kind of normal assumptions for this was actually a 45-year-old. At age 65, he had $600,000 in his traditional account, where he would have had 1.1 million in the IRA. So even with a higher tax rate on that IRA, you end up with more money after taxes with the IRA. And again, as much as I hate taxes, the goal is not to cut taxes to zero. That's easy. Don't have any income. No, the goal is to have as much money as possible after you pay your taxes. Now, again, there are some people that's not the right advice. For the general person, that's what I think makes sense.